right, it is 6 o'clock and we will begin our public hearing, our scheduled public hearing. Mr. County Administrator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is the first of two public hearings on the Community Development Block Grant application opportunity. The item before you, Commissioners, again requests that you conduct the first public hearing and that again provides a lot of background. The Commissioners may know that the county was recently awarded a $750,000 CDBG for funding our housing rehabilitation program. This is sort of an extra round, if you will. We're happy to see those. They don't happen all the time, but we certainly take advantage of them every time that they do. Again, the item goes on and talks a little bit about the requirements of the public hearing under Florida Administrative Code, and it gives us additional credit toward our application to do so. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask Shinkton Lamy to come up, and he's got some required issues to bring up before the board, again, to give us a little greater competitive advantage in our application. But this, again, Commissioners, is the first public hearing. It's limited to general information about the grant opportunity, which, again, staff will present here in just a moment. The board cannot at this time take any action during the first public hearing. However, as detailed in the item, the county's CDBG Citizen Task Force met prior to the public hearing, again, to position the county for eligibility for the maximum allowable points. The task force recommended that the county seek the CDBG funding for improvements to the Fort Braden Community Center as the most competitive project and to build on the county's successful application, our previous application, which was for the Miccosukee Community Center, which, again, we were successful in getting. And at this point, let me bring up Shinkton Lamy, who, again, has a little bit of a few issues to bring up consistent with the application process. Shinkton?
All right. Thank you, Mr. County Administrator. Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, I'll run through this very brief presentation, but required by Florida Commerce, and answer any questions that you may have at the end. So, Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, is administered by HUD to invest in projects that improve the quality of life and economic opportunities for low to moderate income households. CDBG funds are distributed directly to states and entitlement communities. Now, CDBG population size is what determines whether a community is an entitlement or non-entitlement community. Cities with at least 50,000 or more in population, and counties with at least 200,000, not including their city populations, are what are considered entitlement communities. All other communities are considered non-entitlement. By communities, we're talking about local governments. Here locally, the city of Tallahassee, of course, is an entitlement community because their population is well over 50,000. And for Leon County, unincorporated, our unincorporated numbers is well under 200,000, so we are a non-entitlement community. So as an entitlement community, the city receives approximately $3 million annually, which they can invest into housing, homelessness, and those different types of programs. In Florida, non-entitlement communities like Leon County can apply to the state for CDBG through the Florida Small City CDBG program. It's a competitive grant process, which means funding is not guaranteed. But as the county administrator mentioned, we have been highly successful over the years with receiving CDBG dollars, and we recently, of course, received $750,000 for housing rehab. Last month, Florida Commerce announced the availability of another $40 million in CDBG funding, and that application window opened on March 5th, and it will close on May 2nd. Leon County can apply for funding in one of 4 areas that you see are listed up here on the slide that must benefit low to moderate income households, and I'll quickly touch on each very quickly. So with housing rehab, as we all know, that provides major repairs to homes of low income households, such as roof and septic tank replacements, which of course we just received those dollars and are excited to finally, when we get an opportunity to actually get a contract in place, bring that back before the board. Neighborhood revitalization is another category, and funds can be utilized for neighborhood improvements like community center renovations, parks, public streets, and sidewalks, as well as water and sewer infrastructures. As we mentioned in the item, in 2021, the county actually received $3.6 million in this category for improvements to the Mickey Community Center. Under the commercial revitalization, CDBG funds can be used to assist commercial property owners for renovations to blighted structures. And then finally, in the economic development category, that provides funding for projects similar to those under commercial revitalization, except those projects actually have to also create private sector jobs for low to moderate income households. So the reason we are holding this first public hearing is because of recent changes that Florida Commerce made for upcoming funding opportunities. Typically, local governments that recently have been awarded CDBG funds, like Leon County, cannot apply for a subsequent round. However, Florida Commerce is allowing all non-entitlement governments to apply for this opportunity in order for them to more rapidly allocate the federal dollars that they currently have. Also, there is no maximum funding cap this round, which is typically about $750,000. This will allow the county then to apply for more CDBG dollars at a higher amount. Applications still have to be scored utilizing a point system, and a local government, as the county administrator mentioned, can receive the highest points for citizen participation when their citizen advisory task force team meets prior to the first public hearing to make a recommendation. Well, guess what? Our task force did that. And they did that earlier this month, at which time they staff made a presentation. There was an opportunity for citizen input, and at that time, they made the recommendation that the county seek CDBG funding for the improvements at Fort Braden Community Center. Primarily because, of course, it will well position our application to be competitive, as well as it will be in line with what we did over at Mississippi Community Center. Now, the board is prohibited from discussing or taking any action regarding that task force recommendation this evening during the first public hearing, or any other opportunities that might come up. The purpose of tonight's meeting, of course, is to obtain additional citizen input, if there are any, on community needs that could be addressed with CDBG funding. It will actually be at the second public hearing that the board can consider the task force recommendation, as well as a draft CDBG application that will be brought before you for your consideration also. And the second public hearing is the reason that we're recommending that be held, as you can see in your item, to be scheduled for April 8th at 6 p.m. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Shington. Mr. County Administrator, anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no speakers on this item.
All right, commissioners, we need Commissioner Proctor.
Shington, I have for a long time desired, and I saw fire hydrants listed. I've heard Commissioner Minor and Commissioner Maddox report that Crawfordville Road's widening is imminent. Going down the last weekend, I saw the pink things on the side of the road. It may be expanded. Is there a possibility we can get fire hydrants to come down Crawfordville Road to serve communities on that stretch of highway, beginning at Glover Road, going down to what's the east-west highway called?
Commissioner Proctor, can we get a motion first before you get into all that? Staff recommendation is options 1 and 2.
So move.
All right, we got a motion second. Thank you.
From Crawfordville to Woodville, what's that road between those two, Commissioner?
Commissioner Caban?
Is it Oak Ridge?
I was just making a point of order. Commissioner Proctor, we're not on commissioner discussion time right now.
No. With response.
He's asking Shington a question about the CDBG.
I thought you were, okay. No. I was like.
No. I was asking, what's that road that divides our north and south boundary of this?
Capital Circle Southwest.
No, come down Crawfordville and make a left. Is that Oak Ridge Road?
Oak Ridge Road.
Oak Ridge, okay.
Yes, sir.
So between Glover Road and Oak Ridge Road is like a trillion houses. And over on the right side, west side of Crawfordville Road, which also divides our boundaries, their homes sprinkle up in there. Can we get fire hydrants down Crawfordville Road? Service.
I'm going to have to recognize Charles, of course, who maybe answered the question, but let me just add that in looking at and identifying potential projects that we could potentially apply for CDBG, we actually got a chance to meet with Florida Commerce staff, and they worked with us to identify what type of projects that could be potentially be competitive for CDBG funding, and that's how we were able to evaluate and look at the projects that we have that's available in the unincorporated area and determine that for the Fort Braden Community Center was the project that would well position the county to be competitive for this funding opportunity. But however, I will let Charles talk a little bit.
So we're limited to one project?
Yes, you can apply one application.
One, okay. That's okay, I'm good, Charles. We only can apply for one. I can support Fort Braden, but please note that when I saw fire hydrants and there was no cap, on no cap, well, this is our opportunity. So being that we can only apply for one project, I will allow my thoughts to languish and to be dormant on someday. We might get fire hydrants down the Glover Road, Wade Trail, and Oak Ridge Road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Like the teenagers say, no cap,
No cap.
no capping.
I mean, you give an elected
right.
official no cap.
Commissioners, we got a motion and a second. Commissioner Cummings. Uh-oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to, meeting after meeting, year after year, our county administrator and staff, they're just on top of applying for grants and receiving grants from the county, and we obviously have some great grant writers as county employees because we apply and we receive those grants, and I just want to just give accolades to the county administrator and his staff. I mean, if it's a grant somewhere on the federal level, on the state level, they know about it and they apply, and 9 times out of 10, we receive the funds. So I support options 1 and 2, but it just goes without saying. I don't want to go without saying how much we just appreciate their diligence in bringing what funds they can to the county.
We grant you
Thank you
great
so
things. All right, seeing no other comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Passes unanimously. Commissioners, that's the end of our main agenda, so I think now we're on discussion items. Are citizens to be heard on non-agenda items, any of those?
We have no speakers, Mr. Chairman.
No speakers, okay, awesome. Madam County Attorney, do you have any items for us?
No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Madam County Attorney. Mr. County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have none.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Oh my gosh, we're like butter, we're on a roll. All right, so now we're in discussion items by commissioners. Commissioner Proctor, we'll start with you. Work our way back over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I previously brought up Commissioners' concerns with Senate Bill 420 by Senator Yarborough. I wanted to recommend a suggested that if it is an eventuality that our county moves to protect, safeguard the interests of our employees, that they're not made victims and lose their jobs because the titles of their jobs somehow warrant them to go in front of the state's firing squad. Madam Attorney, I don't know if that's if you're looking for a recommendation, but how would you advise this board to protect our employees? Do we need to modify their titles now? Do we need to white out the part that people don't want to hear. And last week, the president came up with 200 words that the federal administration was told that they could not use. Those included things like black, African-American, discrimination, equity, stuff like that, discriminate. You couldn't use these words. You can't use these words no more. They don't exist. Concepts don't exist. What do we do to protect our employees of years and years from this meanness?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I wouldn't recommend that the board take any action at this time. Again, as we can see from Senate Bill 420, it is changing. It could very well change again before it reaches its final committee destination. It would have to make the floor. It hasn't passed both chambers, and it has not been considered by the governor. So I think any action at this point to do anything related to that would be premature. Of course, staff is monitoring this bill and many others that could potentially impact the county and will be well-positioned if this bill, in whatever form, becomes law, to evaluate any impacts to employees and mitigate those impacts to the greatest extent possible.
So we take no steps right now.
I wouldn't recommend it. It's too early in the legislative process. I would not do anything at this point.
Okay, thank you. Well, Commissioners, I wanted to plant that seed of protection, security for workers against anything that would mock the professional years that they've given serving our community. Secondly, this evening, I want to bring attention to the March 27th Woodville Community Meeting. And I believe Commissioner Caban is going to be there. Commissioner Caban, will we have a band there? just checking. But you all are invited to come to the Woodville Community Meeting on March 27th. Again, I asked for street lights on Crawfordville Road, and I don't know if that would come under CDBG. I didn't see street lights on the list, Shington. But if there's any way before the Lord returns that we could get street lights on Crawfordville Road from Wilson Green, that would be much, much valued. Also, Commissioners, I would am curious to know if the governor has called for the elimination of property taxes in the state, if that is a matter that has gained any traction. County Attorney, has that matter gained any traction? And would we be looking, or have we modeled any scenarios going forward of what we as a county would do, adjust to, if the state eliminated ad valorem property taxes?
We could ask Nikki to see if there's any update on the legislation related to, there's several property tax bills filed, but in terms of the elimination of property taxes, I'd have to ask Nikki about anything specific filed.
No, not yet. There's been a lot of buzz around it. The governor has supported it. But like Vince said, there's a number of proposed exemptions that have been filed this session. But for each of those, it wouldn't just require a 3/5 majority passive legislature. That would also then have to go to the general election ballot in 2026 to then be approved, and it wouldn't affect our budget until fiscal year 2027.
Is there a formal bill has been filed to eliminate statewide?
In the House, there has been a bill filed, not to outright eliminate property taxes, but instead impose a study to be conducted to explore what impacts would be associated with the elimination of property taxes and what alternatives could be then developed or identified to replace those revenues.
in that proposal, is it prescribed the tools, the options of local governments, or will we be free and open to contemplate our own measures of the next steps?
I don't think that's clear. I think at this point, it would just, at the state level, direct a study to be conducted to see what the financial impacts would be, and then, again, potential alternatives to generate the revenue to replace them.
Thank you, Nikki. In the climate commissions that we're in, it occurs to me that we have a cap on our sales tax. Is that accurate?
Yes?
And if we were forced to do away with property, and the only reason I'm bringing this up, I'm only bringing this up because the leader of our state has brought it up. And when you stand in front of the legislature of Florida and declare that this is the direction that you're seeking, I take that seriously. He has the support of the House and the Senate on many things. Just take it seriously. But if we're capped with our sales tax, and if there's not a lifting of the cap, I'm not altogether clear, just in my speculative thoughts of how we could offset and make the difference. We would be in purgatory, for real. But looking at the Doge-like mentality that hoovers above government today, it seems that nobody's concerned what happens to and in our communities. Also speak to the effort to pierce into municipal governance, and even with our home rule status as a county, there are measures that continue to float that would pierce through the veil of our home rule status and would limit, restrict, or either compel our compliance with standards which are not ours, but would be imposed upon us by the state. Serious time. Thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you, Mr. Administrator. And then Commissioners, City Ordinance, Tallahassee City Ordinance 1262, which Mr. Ballas mentioned earlier, against panhandling in the median. And I wanted to ask our county attorney, can we get a mirror of the city's ordinance 12.62? Can we get a county ordinance to make uniform what already exists in the city and to complement the existence of the safety standards against panhandling in the middle of the road?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
So based on board direction at the last board meeting, we are doing we are updating our comprehensive review of all regulations throughout the state of Florida, including all current and other completed litigation, of which there are many around the state of Florida related to those sorts of regulations. We'll, of course, take a look at the city of Tallahassee's. We always want to try to make our ordinance consistent with the cities because from an enforcement perspective, it's easier to enforce. It also doesn't generate confusion for constituents when there's consistency between city and county regulations. To the extent we believe it is legally defensible, we will see what we see, and we'll bring something back to the board for its consideration, as the board directed at the last meeting.
General Counsel, I understand what you said, and we've heard your discussion previously, but I'm curious as to what gives the city of Tallahassee such security that they have 12.62 on the books, and it stands the test called time, but you're reticent to mirror or to allow for this board to mirror the city's 12.62. They have not been sued, and I'm sure here in the Capitol, somebody knows this exists.
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't
Freely.
determine whether somebody sues. There are many state laws, potentially federal laws, county ordinances on the books everywhere that are potentially not constitutional. Some of them have never been challenged, and until they are, they're the law. But I represent the county. I'm going to bring back to the county what I believe is legally defensible and constitutional. And I don't care what any other jurisdiction has adopted. That's not, I don't represent them.
Okay, I like to offer that as a policymaker of this county, there are some things I'm willing to defend. And among those is the elimination of panhandling in the middle of the street. And I'm hopeful that you will bring back a mirror of 12.62. If there are 4 of us here who also don't mind defending what we think is intelligent public safety, I would like to see that as an option.
That'll be the will of the majority of the board.
Well, you're bringing a range of things back. Would you include that as a part of your offerings?
If that's the direction of the board, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, what makes this the direction of the board?
I assume we have to vote on that, and you would ask to.
Make the motion that included among considerations that the county's attorney brings back for our consideration is that the policy of the city of Tallahassee is also one that we can reflect on, marinate on, and consider.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Cummings. We're in discussion on that motion to ask that the county attorney take a look at the city of Tallahassee's ordinances relating to median panhandling. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Point of information, isn't this the same board direction we gave at the last meeting, and we're just waiting for staff to bring back consideration?
It is, but now Commissioner Proctor is specifically asking as one of the options to basically replicate what the city of Tallahassee has when I come back to the board.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any more discussion? All right, we have Commissioner Maddox.
Quickly, so that will come back as an option on top of whatever else you may bring back to us. All right, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously.
Nope,
Commissioner Proctor. I'm sorry.
nay.
I'm sorry. Commissioner O'Keefe was a nay on that. 6-1. Commissioner Proctor, back to you.
Thank you. Commissioners, thank you for your support. Hopefully, we'll be a seamless public policy with the city, matching the city, that law enforcement of all varieties will have the sameness to execute public safety from panhandling. Thank you. Commissioners, I've shared with you this memo and public announcement coming from the secretaries of the Department of Interior and the Secretary of HUD. I was so excited tonight to read on page 2 of Agenda 22. In Agenda 22, I saw this paragraph that Leon County is committed to increasing the stock of affordable housing in the community, as demonstrated through the investment of $5.8 million in direct funding and authorization of approximately $183 million in bond financing that has or will develop more than 1,200 affordable rental units over the next 12 to 18 months. That paragraph goes on to speak for itself with respect to our commitment to affordable housing. Complementing our commitment, commissioners, I share with you the announcement coming out of HUD and Interior that the federal government, which oversees the Department of Interior, more than 500 million acres of federal land, but they've made this statement that America needs more affordable housing, and the federal government can make it happen by making federal land available to build affordable housing stock. Last week, I wrote to President Trump seeking to secure hearing his utterances to make available public land. I don't know how many acres, if 500 million is enough. I don't know how many, but what is being offered now for affordable housing is public land. I'd like to ask this commission that we step hurriedly, swiftly, to look at this opportunity for lands that might be made affordable, free 99, if it is to carry out the purpose that we've indicated in item 22 tonight, that Leon County is committed to increasing the stock of affordable housing, and that the federal government is willing to put the land up to increase the stock of affordable housing. Them two things right there, to me, go together. I'd like to ask for the board to foster a task force to look at this task force and to be swift in being at the front of the line and identifying the elements of qualifying and what steps we can do to move forward. I'll make that as a motion that we develop a task force, direct our staff to look into all the things that we need to do to make affordable housing. I met today, Rachel, what's the name of that group we met with down there at Jacobs Park? Huh? Cajun. Yeah, we met with Cajun today to hear their plea, to hear their yearning for affordable housing, affordable rental units, affordable anything that got a roof over it. And I had no idea before our scheduled meeting with Cajun today, who will have a public meeting on March 31st? March 31st? At March 31st, the Nehemiah meeting is going to invite all of us to hear their desires for housing for people who are unhoused. And then this comes out yesterday, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited. And I'd like to offer that as a motion. And, Mr. Chairman.
Could you restate that motion, Commissioner Proctor?
That we ask our staff to create for us a task force. Did I say task force?
Yes, sir.
A task force to review this new policy direction from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Department of Interior, that we might advantage our own goals of advancing affordable housing. My motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, we have a second from Commissioner Cummings. Any discussion? Go ahead, Commissioner Cummings. Commissioner O'Keefe, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Commissioner Proctor bringing this to our attention. And I support the motion because what we have here is an announcement on the federal level that they have organized a task force as well to look at federal land that could be suitable for housing. So I think it's I was thinking at first that perhaps it might be a little premature. Let us allow them to get themselves together first. But they've got a task force. They've got, contact information by way of address and what have you. So perhaps it's not premature for us to go on, have staff, Mr. County Administrator, organize a task force, whether or not they would be prohibited for doing anything proactive right now. But I think it's feasible to just go on and get it organized, perhaps. So we'll be on board and ready if something comes down.
Commissioner O'Keefe, before you go, County Administrator has some commentary.
Just two things. Again, just to offer, if this turns out to be a motion that the board wishes to support, just to remind that you've got the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee in place and the Housing Finance Authority in place. If those groups were something that the board wanted us to ask them to monitor this and stay advised of it and make any recommendations, I just offer that those are two committees that you have in place where you have commissioner representation on one of them. The other thing I would just offer is that this is really more than a task force, and this isn't a value statement. Obviously, this is the direction of the board. This is more than a task force. This would be a policy position that the board would be taking that's distinct from anything you've done before, which is that you are actively interested in pursuing national forest lands and public lands for the purpose of affordable housing. The direction that we have currently that the board has sort of taken thus far is to give us the direction to actively monitor surplus lands that come available, and certainly we'll do that. This is just, again, a bit of a different, another step forward in that regard. Just wanted to point that out.
Commissioner O'Keefe, then Commissioner Caban.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I cannot support this, creating of a task force, partly because of what the explanation that the county administrators gave, and I think it would be premature to create a task force or establish a U-turn in policy based on one op-ed from HUD secretaries, from an administration that has told us on one day they'll do one thing, and on the next day they're going to probably eliminate HUD. So we're going to create a task force and trust one press release, one op-ed, and change our whole policy when next thing we know, next week there might not be a Department of Interior, there might not be a HUD. I just don't trust this administration enough to take a Wall Street Journal op-ed and change our policy 180 degrees.
Commissioner Caban, and then Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to agree with the sentiment from the county administrator and Commissioner O'Keefe. Commissioner Proctor, you know I love you, but this is something that I will not get behind, and I am going to be consistent with the direction that this board has given staff previously, which is to explore federal land for affordable housing that is in surplus and that does not occur inside the national forest. So additionally, I do know that we have some advisory committees and committees specifically for affordable housing. So I don't want to create like redundant government, which could be counterproductive. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Proctor, I understand your intent of this, which is to create more land available for affordable housing, and that's something that we all want. And we've been spending a lot of time talking with CAJM about it, and us here at the dais, as well as the general community. I can't get behind this either. You know, anything that would be coming from federal lands would be outside the urban services area. Leon County and the city of Tallahassee have committed to striving for the infrastructure within the urban services area to provide services to our neighborhoods. Sewer, water, electricity. Something that would be in the federal lands that would then become available for affordable housing will be outside the current boundaries of the urban services area, which brings up a lot of infrastructure costs that we have not factored in. Not to mention just the principle of the idea of taking lands that have been designated for preservation for residential use. When we actually have our comp plan proposals coming up in the next couple of months, which we'll be talking about in detail, that talks about our efforts to encourage urban infill, which is where I think we need to focus. So I'm against the motion. I understand your intent. I admire the intent. I agree with you on the intent of creating more affordable housing. I just can't do it in this way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Proctor, we're back to you. Oh,
Thank you,
I'm sorry,
Commissioners.
Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Maddox wants to chime in before we get back to you.
Looking at what's going on right now, as far as board comment is concerned, I think the county administrator's suggestion might be the right thing to do or the best thing to do right now, Commissioner Proctor, in that I am on the Affordable Housing Committee. I do think it's interesting to know that the federal government is looking at opening up some of those federal lands for affordable housing to allow, to give direction to the HFA as well as the Affordable Housing Committee of the county to evaluate that and come back with a report or recommendations on how we should move forward as a county on that might be a good avenue to go down right now, given the fact that I think, as Commissioner O'Keefe said, it is just a report in the paper. And from what I understand, the federal government, President Trump is throwing a lot of things against the wall and seeing what sticks. And his administration has been known to throw something there, see how big the public outcry is, and then pull it back within weeks. And so what I would ask Commissioner Proctor is that you allow for the Affordable Housing Committee as well as the HFA to take a look at this on behalf of the board and send back up recommendations or their thoughts on how the board should move forward, and then allow for us as a commission to chew on those recommendations to see if it's something that staff can come back with some recommendations on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. We're back to Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Commissioners. Your thinking on this is consistent. Seldom I disagree with the county administrator, but when I do, I do. And today, notwithstanding everything that you've said about this administration, there are reasons that you should be cautious. The Interior Department and the HUD is making an offer. And from an administration that has offered nothing but has destroyed much, this is the only clear thing that this administration has offered that I have seen constructive, that does not dismantle and tear down lives, government. This seeks to enhance. It's the only thing I've seen. If you can find a rose anyplace else in a cow pasture, let me know. But I just want to share their statement that working together, our agencies can take an inventory of underused federal properties, transfer or lease them to states or localities to address housing needs and support the infrastructure required to make the development viable. So with this land, the support of infrastructure, if it's for affordable housing, comes with that package that they pay for, all while ensuring affordability remains as the core of the mission. We said that was one of the county's goals. We've gone down rabbit holes and come up empty before, and I don't quite understand why we would refuse to consider this as valid. Now, what's very interesting here is their statement that streamlining the regulatory process is a cornerstone of this partnership, and historically building on federal land is a nightmare of red tape. This partnership will cut through the bureaucracy. Interior will reduce the red tape behind land transfers or leases to public housing authorities, nonprofits, and local governments. That's our name, local government. HUD will ensure these projects align with affordability goals and development needs. I have never, in 28 years, seen anything to gift local government from Interior or HUD. And I speak to you, JaVale, where you at? as having been U.S. Senator Bob Graham's liaison to HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And I speak to you with the experience of federal background in housing. I'm telling y'all, never seen nothing like this. JaVale preceded me in working in U.S. Senator Bob Graham's office. I wish I'd never worked there because they like to kill me with work. And Vince, your aide Regina, worked in U.S. Senator Bob Graham's office for 13, 14 years. Very talented. But this right here is well worth, and I'm asking you all to review it, to allow it to marinate, and possibly to come back and give it another thought. While we're independently elected, we're not a group, I should disclose to you that I will continue to look into the variables that will make this real. It could be throwing something on the wall to see what will stick. But it could be the possibility of those who first in line may well find treasure. I'm going to take that chance. And independent of you, my searching for the stability of this promise is what I'm going to proceed to do. So I'm very grateful for y'all giving me opportunity to share this information. And where does new wine go? Where do you put new wine? Where do you put new thinking? Where do you put new thinking? Well, Jesus said that you can't put new wine in old wine skins, or it bursts and it spills on the ground. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Cummings?
Wait. Is the motion on the floor?
We have a motion,
Okay,
and we have a second from Commissioner Cummings.
I'm going to go after.
Okay.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman, I'd
Cummings?
like to
I
withdraw my
second.
motion. I withdraw my
You
motion.
want to withdraw your motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, so,
I have no motion.
okay, Commissioner Maddox.
I do think the county administrator does have an idea, Commissioner Proctor, and I hate to let the opportunity pass. When I read it, I was excited about it too. I don't know what, when they say fed lands, I know I don't want to mess with the national forest, but are there other fed lands that we could look at? It's not a bad idea for someone to evaluate it. So what I'll do is I'll make a motion that we ask, as the county administrator said, the board ask the HFA as well as the Affordable Housing Committee for the county to look at these proposals coming down from the federal government and give recommendation, an evaluation of those proposals. That'd be my motion, Mr. Chair.
I second it, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All right, any further discussion?
Yeah,
Oh,
I never did get a chance to go.
okay, go ahead, Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things, I think we need to recognize that this is the federal government that's going to be doing identification. It's the federal government's land. And based on what we have here and some other articles that we have, it says that these two federal agencies have formed a task force, and they will be looking at federal properties in various states. They might not even look at Florida. We don't know, but they will be doing the identification. So I think it's good if we already have an affordable housing committee already established with a member of the commission as part of that committee. I think it's a great idea, as recommended by Commissioner Proctor, that we have that committee as liaison to look at it in the event property in Florida and specifically in Leon County is identified by the federal government. But based on my reading of this, it's not us to identify the property. They will identify a property that they feel might be in line with their policies and procedures to increase affordable housing. So it might just go right over us, we don't know.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Commissioner Maddox, before you go, I've got Commissioner Caban and then Commissioner O'Keefe, and then I'll come back to you, Commissioner Maddox, but I want to chime in just real quickly. I will not support the motion. I think that what the county administrator is saying to us is that we are putting ourselves in a different posture if we subscribe to this idea that the federal government, through the Department of Interior and the Department of HUD, are going to make federal lands potentially available for housing. 500 million acres of federal land, they're not talking about like an inner city block of land. They're talking about national parks and national forests. And there is no scenario in which I would support, if the federal government came to us right now and said, you can have 500 acres of the national forest, I would say, no, I don't want 500 acres of the national forest. It's a national forest. So there is no scenario under this idea that I could support. So I think that by taking this posture as a board, we're sort of saying, okay, well, we're willing to consider that. I'm not willing to consider that. We're supposed to be building housing in our inner city. We're supposed to be infilling. Our comp plan amendments are taking efforts to do that. I think that this is like letting a foot in the door, a crack in the door to say, oh, we would consider that. I just don't think that's a good policy position. It's not a policy position that I don't think most of us would support. So I cannot support that motion. I think that our HFA and our housing finance committees are already looking at every single alternative. And if the federal government comes to them and goes, hey, what do you think about what land in Leon County is possible for this? They're going to say, well, the national forest is the most obvious choice. So I just don't think the federal government owns a bunch of land downtown. And so that they're not going to use for a courthouse. So that's my thought on it. So now we can, y'all carry on. Commissioner Caban?
I'll defer to Commissioner Maddox.
Okay, Commissioner Maddox?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what you're saying, but I think you're missing the premise in which I'm speaking to do this. I think Commissioner Cummings makes a good point. The lands will be identified by the federal government. So it's almost like if somebody came to you and said, I'm going to give you $500,000. I'll identify where it's coming from out of my money, but I'm going to give you $500,000. And you don't have a mechanism to evaluate the $500,000 they're trying to give you because, well, I don't agree with the pot of money that you may go get the $500,000 out of. So I'm not even going to create something to see if I want to look into it. I think it's a little bit. I think we're thinking a little bit too far ahead right here. So I think what I'm attempting to do here is have a group designated, being the HFA, being the Affordable Housing Committee, who does this work, that will be able to take a look at whatever federal lands they are considering, and then be able to chew on that and make recommendations back to this board without commitment to say, thank you, Madam, pass, immediate pass, commitment to say there's something that we're going to do. It's not a thing of, if, or let's say, well, we're going to push for it. No, it's just, if they're going to find lands within the state of Florida, Leon County, that they're willing to give for affordable housing, what are we going to say? We're just not going to consider those lands? We're not going to evaluate those lands? I think having a group designated to dig into this and say, okay, what are you considering? Or to look at what they're considering and to bring it back and look at it before we even get a hold to it, because you're right. It may be something that we're never going to consider. But I still don't think it's something that we shouldn't have another group of people look at and say whether or not we should be considering it. I just think it's a little bit short-minded for us not to at least have someone that is designated to look at this as a first level of defense to see if it's even worth the commission's time to come back and look at it as a whole. So that's the intent of the motion, to say if the federal government identifies land in Leon County, that the first line of defense that will take a look at it will be Jelani Marks and the folks in our HFA, our Affordable Housing Committee and our HFA, to see is this something that's even worth our commission's time? Is this something that we would recommend as a Affordable Housing Committee that our commission look at? Because that committee will take into consideration, is it in the national forest? Is it something that we want to do in the national forest? Is it outside? How far is it from the urban services area? Well, what part of affordable is it? How affordable will it be if it's outside of the urban services area and all the other housing costs that comes with it? You know, is that really affordable for someone who may work in town? And these are all things that we talk about every day when we have those meetings. So I think it's the right group. If the federal government is going to go down this road to evaluate it first and give recommendations back to the county, and that is the intent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the point of that, Commissioner Maddox, again, I think if we're acting based on this op-ed, then this op-ed is about federally, massively owned federal land. We're talking about national parks and national forests. That's what they are talking about. They're not talking about urban infill. They're talking about national forests and national parks. And so if you take this posture, you're saying you're down for that. And my only point is, I'm saying, well, that would be my opinion, is that taking this posture right now in response to this article is saying you're down for that.
That's
And
a
so
terrible
that's not what I'm down
mischaracterization
for.
of what I'm saying. It's not saying we're down for that. It's saying that instead of, when it comes down, Commissioner Proctor coming back and saying that these lands have been identified in Leon County by the federal government, and I want our county administrator and staff to look at it, we've already designated for Commissioner Proctor that he will not do that, that instead that proposal will go to the HFA as well as the Affordable Housing Committee as a first line of defense, and they will look at it and will matriculate up that way. If they come back and say that they have federal lands available, it's no indication that I support any of it. Do I want to build in the national forest? Absolutely not. But if they're going to say that we have land, Commissioner Proctor has shown that he's going to come back every single time and say that they got land, they're giving it to us, what we going to do? Well, Commissioner Proctor, this is the mechanism for it to be evaluated, that we can have a group look at it, and then you can get the information you need to come back to us and make a plea without using our staff's time. That's no indication that I support anything. That's just me trying to look at it, at this picture as a whole, as the District 1 Commissioner is going to fight like hell for this to the day he's not on this commission anymore, and he's going to ask the staff every single time to evaluate it. Well, let's let our citizens evaluate it and then let it matriculate up and give him the stuff that he needs. So then they may evaluate and say to Commissioner Proctor, this is not worth our time because it's this, and other, and the cost is this, that, and the other. It's not really affordable. And then he'll get the information he needs without staff using the time that they got to use that could be going on to other things. It's just a first line of defense. It's not consent. Don't characterize my motion as saying that I'm giving consent that I am on board with this. It's just a way of evaluating the proposals. If you don't agree with it, it's totally fine, but don't mischaracterize my intent. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner, you want to go, Commissioner Caban? Commissioner Cummings, you want to go? Okay, after Commissioner Caban.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For a point of clarification, how does the current motion on the floor differ from the stance that we've taken already? If I may address the question to the county administrator, because I feel like it's kind of very similar. I know before we had discussed a surplus of federal land outside of the national forest, so I'm just looking for a little clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, yeah, and let me be real clear. I wasn't expressing an opinion. Initially, what I was saying was if the board chose to give us the direction to form a task force, just simply that you have two in place right now, that would be good, and you could do that or do a different task force. But the second part of what I said was that you might want to have a discussion just like this one so that that task force knew what the parameters of their charge would be. And again, and the board could decide that. So you're not reading in the newspaper tomorrow that there's a task force out running and identifying lands in the national forest if that's not what the board wants. And so a conversation like this one is good. If you decided to have a task force do this, then a policy discussion like this is probably warranted. And we don't have an opinion on it. Whatever the direction of the board is, it is. And we would charge them to do that. But we would need that clarification given that the board's previous direction has been limited to surplus lands. So that's all I was suggesting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Commissioner Maddox, is your motion prefacing using the current existing advisory boards or creating a new
Yes.
task force?
No, it's just currently.
And then in your motion, are we designating specifically, like clearly, that this is not for national forest land?
No, it's not. What I'm saying is, sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Maddox.
Any federal lands that's identified by the federal government as lands that they are willing to allow for local governments to use for affordable housing, that our HFA and our Affordable Housing Committee operate as a task force to evaluate that and make recommendation back to our commission. Now, if the commission wants to give direction to them that the commission will not entertain national park lands, then so be it, give them that direction. But don't limit them from being able to evaluate whatever may come down from the federal government as in lands for affordable housing.
So where I'm at, Commissioner Maddox, I will support the motion if in the motion it is very clearly defined that this does not pertain to any national forest land. That's where I am on it, because I want it to be very, very clear that this does not entail, we will not entertain the development of the national forest in any way, shape, or form. That's just kind of where I am on the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
We don't, in response.
Commissioner Cummings would like to chime in here, I think. Bless it. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, in response to that, what I'd be willing to do is give direction from this board that it won't approve any national park lands, okay? But I still want that committee to have the ability to look at any lands and make recommendation that comes from the national government. So if we don't want to, we don't have to. But give them the ability to look at anything that comes from the national government in the way of affordable housing.
Mr. Chair.
Sure. Commissioner
So
Cummings?
if that is how we would approach it, I wouldn't be able to support it. And the reason for that is I've learned how the process goes. You know, if federal land and national forest becomes available, they bring it to the board. It's a citizen advisory board. The citizen advisory board, it gets the legs to it. And next thing you know, it kind of grows and grows and grows. It becomes a bigger ordeal. And so I'd rather just end the conversation right here, right now, versus allow it to get legs. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Cummings?
Yes, Commissioner, Mr. Chair. I think the motion on the floor is all in the posture of us being informed commissioners. We're here representing the citizens of Leon County, looking at those individuals who are homeless, who need affordable housing. Right now, all we have is this op-ed from the Wall Street Journal. So I want to be more informed. So I think the two standing committees that were identified by the county administrator, that's part of Commissioner Maddox's motion, are clearly capable of looking at anything that comes from the federal government that might, just might, and it might not, that just might identify some federal lands here in Leon County. And then we, as a board, as a commission, if we want to emphatically say, no, we don't agree with your designation of any land in Leon County for affordable housing, we can do it at that time. But right now, everything is hypothetical. Nothing has been identified yet. So I just think we need to be more informed, be well informed, and I believe those standing committees can serve as the informants for us. But right now, I don't want to just close the door without walking through it a little. So I support the motion on the floor.
All right. Commissioner Minor and then Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support Commissioner Maddox's motion if it had the exception for the national forests. That's the only way I would support it, and I appreciate what he's trying to do, but I can't support the motion on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Commissioner Proctor, you want to close us out?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I can, but Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, what I like about the language is clearly that it states they're working, these agencies, our agencies are working to take inventory of underused federal properties. They didn't call them national, they didn't call them some of the words you've used, but they said federal properties. Transfer or lease them to states or localities to address housing needs and support the infrastructure required to make development viable. They're not just giving the land, but they're bringing the money. And they said the word support, that means money, y'all know, support, like child support money, to support the infrastructure. This is a low to no cost, potentially, to us to support the national goal. When somebody tells you that they're going to support the infrastructure required to make the development viable and tells us that Interior will reduce the red tape behind land transfers or leases to public authority, housing authorities, nonprofits, and local governments. So we may not be the force that have to step forward anyway. Tallahassee Housing Authority could be a source. And with the infrastructure support of infrastructure promise in these developments, they really wouldn't need us, but they don't need us much anyway. We're local government, our name's been called, the Housing Authority or nonprofit. So there could be anybody that registers up as a nonprofit, get access to a bunch of land and create a gated community, but something that was purposed to be for affordable. For many, many years, I have seen land. I don't know, Commissioner Caban, what makes sacred something called national forest. Golden Eagle was a forest. Summerbrook was a forest. I remember when Ox Bottom was a forest. The east side out there, I remember all of that being a forest. Going out to Buck Lake Road was going out in the country. That was a forest. That we can't cut down the forest. Each one of us live someplace that was a forest. So I misunderstand what makes, I'm a federal citizen of the United States. I'm a citizen of the state of Florida. I'm a citizen of Leon County. I'm all of them, all three of them things. That dirt is mine, state dirt is mine, and county dirt is mine. It's all of ours, because it belongs to we the people. And this government that don't pay no taxes, we got, Mr. Long, if we got 52%, the majority of our property taxes is not even taxable, we could flip this, increase our tax base. You all may not have driven down to Crawfordville, and in particular driving to the east side of Crawfordville to see all the homes built. You may have not driven to Midway recently to see all of the people who have moved from Tallahassee as first-time home buyers and all of that affordable housing to go to Gaston County. We have lost population, and we have lost eternal tax advantages for the failure of having property that could sustain new communities. This offer for us to get ready, this announcement, this blowing of the bugle is absolutely what each of us commissioners do. Information that we receive, things that are happening, opportunities of which we can advantage our community, this county, is what each of us, some part of our duty as commissioners, we try to do, to empower, to make an impact, and in particular for affordable and making room in this county. This particular county shouldn't have to go down to Crawfordville and Wakulla to get an affordable opportunity. You drive past the National Forest, past it, and now the federal government is saying, we will give you the land and we will give you the infrastructure to make real opportunities for affordable. I'm not trying to get the north side property, but I just want the south side's National Forest to be made available. St. Joe owns the rest. God knows that Southwood was a forest. Southwood. Ain't nothing holy about that. So what's so holy about national, I can't do this, oh no. I will support the motion, and I hope that we will evolve, and that new wine possibly may have to go into new wine skins, possibly. Thank you very much.
All right, we've got a motion.
One other thing, Mr. Chairman. One final comment about national land, national forest. County administrator will tell you that, 15, 18, 20 years ago, we actually, federal government was swapping out land for the North Florida Fairground. And Congressman Boyd made possible and set arrangements that we would move the fairground into the national forest. Boyd did that. He didn't think the land was holy. He was trying to make and help to facilitate the fairground becoming available to the community. So I say to you, colleagues, that we've had a precedent whereby we were on the cusp of owning federal property, if you will, was about to be given to us for free 99. And here we have property that we likely can retain for free 99. And if we could look beyond our moment on this stage of life and note that we had an opportunity years ago to purchase Capitol Circle for a very cheap price. Our commissioners said, no, it ain't gonna never, Capitol Circle, we don't never go on, we never reach that far. We bought a 2-lane road. And many years later, we've paid millions of dollars to fulfill and to have the ownership. We could have gotten an easement. We didn't pay for it at that time. I submit to you that 60, 75 years from now, we would have looked very astute. We would look very wisdomatic to have set in place, even if we only inventory this property, Mr. Chairman, in our own holdings as a county. Now, what's unique and different, commissioners, about President Trump's ask? He seeks property exterior to the boundaries of the United States. We're seeking ownership of property that's interior within the boundaries of Leon. That's not a hard see. The future will reward our thinking if we act to secure for the future. It may not be any calls that we make, but that's why people plant trees for their grandchildren to harvest those and become wealthy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, commissioners, we got a motion by Commissioner Maddox and a second from Commissioner Cummings. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No.
Nay.
Okay, so we have 4 nays and 3 yays. The motion does not pass. Do you need me to articulate the? Okay. All right, commissioners. Commissioner Proctor, back to you.
Final issue tonight. Thank you, commissioners. You all have been very tender and kind and patient. Thank you. Today we met with the Jake Gaither Homeowners Board of Leadership Board, and Assistant Administrator Fall was there, and we had Commissioner Williams Cox and Curtis Richardson were in attendance. And the issue about water as it relates to Jake Gaither Golf Club, the housing on Creek Road, the flooding on North Ridge Road, and the water coming from the east side along Orange Avenue into that community. And the dredging of Lake Henrietta, owned by the county, was put forth. And I want to ask our staff and to make the motion that our staff be permitted to work with the city's efforts to make identification of those issues which are continuing to cause flooding in the community of Jay Gaither, and that our staff also be encouraged to make recommendations with respect to alleviating the flooding. And I'm not an engineer, but Ms. Long, what was presented today was that it seems to be the failure of Lake Henrietta to receive the waters passing through the back of the golf course, coming down the Silver Lake, passing under the bridge on the North Ridge Road, and coming into Lake Henrietta. And here, Henrietta, thus, that water moving southward into Munson Slough. But it's been said that Lake Henrietta is a kidney that's not functioning. And I'd like very much if this board would support my ask of our staff working with the city to see what adjustments can occur that we can facilitate the water's flow into Munson Slough. So moved.
You got that?
We do, and we'd be happy to receive that direction. I think it's consistent with what we're doing currently on Lake Henrietta, but I think Commissioner Proctor is right that we could further support the city's efforts to deal with their swales and their ditches so that the water gets there, but it's consistent with what the work that we're doing in Henrietta. And, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Commissioner O'Keefe? Okay. Any other discussion?
Territorially, Mr. Chairman, what Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Williams-Cox both nodded heads to is that our responsibility is at the west side of Ridge Road, and the city's jurisdiction is the east side, Silver Lake, Jay Gaither's Golf Course, Creek Road, all of that. So in the fall, unless I missed something, our focus, I defer to the fall, if I may.
Commissioner.
Go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner, you're on point. The city commissioners both pointed to the limits of where the city jurisdiction was and where the county's jurisdiction was, where it goes into Lake Henrietta and further south.
Okay, so I'm merely asking that the scope of our inquiry, as well as relief to make that water flow, is the Lake Henrietta and the west side of Ridge Road.
I think staff's clear.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, passes unanimously. Sorry about that, Commissioner Minor.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 25th Chain of Parks Art Festival is coming up on April 26th and 27th, and I'd like to make a motion for a proclamation to recognize the festival's 25-year milestone.
So move.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously.
Also, I'd like to move for a proclamation recognizing the Holocaust Education Resource Council, HERC, on its 20th anniversary.
So moved, seconded by Commissioner Caban. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, passes unanimously.
Thank you. And then finally, to my county commission colleagues, the Florida Association of Counties Legislative Day is tomorrow. And so registration starts at FAC at 7 a.m. at the Challenger Center with the legislative briefing starting at 8 o'clock. So if you'd like to come, I know we'd love to have you. Commissioner Vice Chair Caban was going to be there, but I know he has a scheduling conflict, and so.
I was supposed to be there for him, and I can't.
Yeah. So, but we'll miss you too. But if anybody else can make it, it's a good day. There's a lot of great county commissioners from around the state coming to Tallahassee to meet, talk about legislative priorities at the state level for FAC that help all of us here back at home. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the Capitol and talk to legislators advocating for those policies. So that's all I got. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Minor, for your brevity. We appreciate that. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Minor, make sure you let me tag along to the Chain of Parks presentation
Yeah.
to that proclamation, so that my wife can spend some money as well when we're there. I have a question, I think it's probably for the county attorney, but Mr. Chair, I'll have you direct it. I believe it was last year or the year before, we created an ordinance relating to soliciting on private property that said if there was a certain sign with specific requirements referencing a county statute, if somebody was soliciting without written permission, they could be trespassed from the private property. And I was curious if we have had any activity on that. Have any businesses inquired about the proper signage? Do we know if it's been enforced or anything like
Utilized.
that?
Yeah, Madam County Attorney.
I could defer to administrative staff. They might be aware of that. I have not heard anything.
I can
but-
say anecdotally, I've seen the signs.
I was gonna say, I keep my eye out, I haven't seen one
I've
yet.
seen
I haven't
quite a
seen one that
few.
was proper yet, but.
I have seen quite a few.
We'd probably have to bring that back to you.
Yeah, so they may not have that information. Do we want staff to anecdotally, can you
Anything?
chime in, or in terms of enforcement or utility of those?
Yeah, so when a business reaches out, we defer them to the OEV website, which has the information about how they can put a sign up, what it needs to look like. And so as businesses reach out, we just tell them what they need. But anecdotally, it's a few that have reached out. We could look into exactly how many have utilized that, though.
Perfect. If, I don't need to make a motion or anything, if you could send me that info after the meeting, that'd be fine.
Awesome.
Well, not tonight, following our meeting. The second thing I have is I would like to request a proclamation recognizing March as Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. I would present this to the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council at their office at an event later this month.
Perfect. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye passes 6-0 with Commissioner Proctor out of chambers.
Thank you. And I move to request an agenda item for next meeting to consider a $3,000 sponsorship towards WFSU's Kids Career Day. That is on May 17th. It's an event from WFSU Public Media that highlights careers for kids and launches people into that interest. Per our policy, I'm trying to get out 60 days ahead of time so we could have that as an agenda item to consider a $3,000 sponsorship to WFSU.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 6-0. Commissioner Proctor out of chambers.
And the last thing is, I want to thank Commissioner Minor for coming out for our Crosswalks to Courtyard event with KCCI. We painted nice pretty colors around the crosswalks. And I want to thank KCCI for making sure that the art looked good. We were not going to let it in District 5 unless it was sharp, and it came out great. So thank you for everyone who put that together. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Commissioner Maddox for the proclamation for Coach Hamilton today. And as I indicated when he was there, is some community sentiment about renaming the Florida State basketball court after him. And of course, that's not nothing we can do. That's something that has to be done by FSU. But I would certainly like the commission to support that particular effort in the guise of maybe a letter of support to the president of the university. So I move that we authorize the chair to prepare a letter of support to rename the Florida State basketball court, the Leonard Hamilton Court at the Donald Tucker Civic Center.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes, Commissioner Proctor, unanimously. All right.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Of course, this is Women's History Month, and there's been a lot of activities and banquets and luncheons recognizing just remarkable women here that do a lot of great things in the community, present and past. And I'm certainly appreciative of all the women in our community that continue to uplift the community and supported the proclamation that we gave today for Women's History Month. But even though we have a lot of women that continue to make strides and significant contributions locally and nationally, we do have women that are struggling with mental health issues, with homelessness, drug addiction, trafficking, sex trafficking. And I think we all remember a couple of weeks ago when it was a big sting over in Jefferson County, where they arrested over 10 individuals that were perpetrators of this human trafficking. Locally, I know we know that we have women that are suffering. All you have to do is walk down Pensacola Street or go out Mahan East, and you can see homeless people, but specifically, I guess because it's Women History Month, I'm mentioning women, but you can see the number of women at all ages, young, old, that are homeless. And one of the speakers on a non-agenda item tonight, it was ironic that he had Matt put up a picture of apparently a homeless female that was crossing the street down on Crawfordville Road or somewhere in that area, who was homeless. In last month, there was a forum on human trafficking, and what they did, if they had an individual who was a victim of human trafficking, who came to the forum, and she told her story about how horrific her experience was. But as part of that forum, they had some professional individuals. One professor from the college, TSC, was there, and also a psychology professor who also works with Survive and Thrive with human trafficking. And she was there. One of the things that they shared is that drug traffickers, human traffickers, sex traffickers, they prey on individuals with certain characteristics. At the top, homelessness. They prey on homeless individuals. They prey on those that might be hungry, lack money, lack food. And of course, if you're homeless, you got low self-esteem. And so women that are homeless with those characteristics are just vulnerable. Now, I know we are concerned about our overall homeless population, but I'm trying to just put a focus on women at this particular point, because homeless women are really more vulnerable to being victims of sex crimes, being victims of human trafficking crimes than just your general population of men. So what I would like to do, commissioners, I'd like to probably get your opinion, but I'd like to do move that we look at whether or not it could make a difference, Mr. County Administrator, if we had some specific individuals, specifically our host deputies, that are specifically designated to look at our women in our homeless population. Now, commissioners, you all remember back in 2022, we approved funding for 2 host deputies, and their job was to specifically look at the homeless population. The sheriff gave us a report. In that report, I think after 6 months, they identified close to 200 individuals, but close to 100 of those were women. I believe the report indicated 81 or 91 women that were homeless on the street. And I don't know, I I just wonder if we had a specific individual, a host deputy sheriff that dealt specifically with the women that are homeless, with our goal being to get all of the women and girls, we know that we have children that are homeless as well, among them girls. They're vulnerable too, okay? If the ultimate goal was to get all of the homeless women off the street, would that make a remarkable difference? We also got some information from the sheriff department on the number of homeless individuals that are arrested or that have been arrested over the last 1 or 2 months. And that's close to 200 or over 200. And I know we've talked before about what it costs to maintain a person in jail, incarcerated over 1 night, over 2 nights, over 5 nights. And a lot of these individuals, Commissioner Proctor, are women, out of the number of women, and they're recidivists as well. But what struck me in looking at the report, a lot of them are arrested for something like petty theft. And petty theft is stealing something that's valued less than $750, which means to me that that's just somebody trying to survive from day to day. Petty theft, not grand theft, petty theft. Some of them are just charged with stealing food, stealing a bottle of water. So what I would like to do this Women History Month, commissioners, is have staff bring back an agenda item to look at the variables that will be involved with the host sheriff to deal specifically with our homeless women, who many of them have mental issues too, and we've discussed that. Mental issues, many of them have substance abuse issues, but I venture to say, I believe if there was a specific host sheriff designated just for the women, I just believe it would make a difference in the population. And if we have an ultimate goal of 100% removal of women from the street, I think that's a lofty goal. And I think it's achievable as well. So I would like, Mr. County Administrator, if that's possible.
Chair, I second that. That motion, I second.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add, if this is the motion, we'd be happy to analyze that and bring it back. I would just offer the board may wish to expand it further because there are good programs in the community, whether it's Refuge House Shelter or Hope or others that do good things. And we may, again, bring those programs back as well for the board because there may be an existing program that's doing good work and may be effective in addition to us bringing back whatever recommendations we might have for the host deputies.
Oh, thank you, Mr. County Administrator. And I recognize Survive and Thrive and many of those organizations that house our women, that house our children, and they are really working and doing a great job with the host sheriffs, that the two that are designated on the street now. But I just believe during this Women History Month that we commissioners, all of us have mothers, and most of you have wives. We have daughters, okay? We have granddaughters, goddaughters. And I just believe that it's time for us to give some special attention to our women that find themselves victims of homelessness with all of the other vices, including, mental health, drug abuse, what have you.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Commissioner Proctor, you'd like to chime in? Well, Commissioner
Mr. Chair,
O'Keefe is ahead
Commissioners,
of
I support this good motion. Often I feel many of the things that Commissioner Cummings stated, but sometimes not being a woman, I don't want to mess up the language of what the state, the language that is delicate. trafficking, sexual abuse, the vulnerability of not having adequate safeguards for girls, but sometimes it's just almost politically incorrect to give a woman a compliment anymore without a compliment being skewed wrong. So you just don't even talk about women, what they need, and all of that, because it almost ain't worth saying the word woman. I don't know if the Trump administration has eliminated it among the 200 words that they don't want to talk about. But it's an excellent point. Support it wholeheartedly. The sheriff, to the credit of this board, sought to reduce the recidivism, particularly on the corridor of Pensacola, and running the risk of looking like a social work agency versus a law enforcement agency. Our board hit the brakes and sort of agreed that the criminal enforcement for people who were, some of them mentally ill, some of them just completely disoriented, some of them nowhere to go. So lock people up for loitering because of their economic conditions. So, Commissioner Cummings, if you don't pull this load, ain't none of us up here can do it but you. 4 of us up here don't have wives. You ain't gotten one, and 3 of us guys don't have one. So this is the stuff that we lean on you for, your sensitivities, your seeing. Now, it was the first or second report of the Commission on Women and Girls. They did a clear delineation of the sociological traumas, I mean, just categories of women. But they went soft. In the data that they first presented, they just backed away from those kinds of reports to chart and tell us the intricate details of women in this community. I don't know why. If they do not chronicle the hurts, the pains, the sufferings, the places, the spaces with women, and how hard it is to graduate up to the ALICE population to get there. And I heard Rachel tell the group today, it's hard to graduate up, and when you get to ALICE, anything can pull you back down. So my whole heart supports what you're asking for. It's well worth a sit down with the sheriff, who we all gave great commendations for his this and his that. And I think that the sheriff that we have will be empathetic and possibly would entertain. We might have to pay for it, but the position you're talking about. But I don't think that all the women, and I've long thought this, being the chair of and touring the jail, from the posture of chairing the Public Safety Council. And our task is to reduce the jail population. And I just don't believe that the women that I see, I don't think I'm looking at criminals, but they in jail with criminals, as criminals. And there's something that mistriggered, fallen short, miscued, something has happened that they're not free and called criminals. And I don't think it's their mens rea or their criminal minds intent is a factor at all. So I support that, because those are not all criminals. It's something that's fallen short in life, and they've landed there. So I'm with you.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. I absolutely support this, especially if we're talking about offering to the sheriff, being willing to fund another host deputy to execute this special purpose. I look forward to hearing back from the sheriff and the current host deputies how this would look and what they think would be effective. And I think that it's a worthwhile use of our resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Keefe. We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, passes unanimously. Back to you, Commissioner Cummings.
Mr. Chair, that's really all I have. I just want to thank again the members of this commission for the diligence and professionalism and camaraderie that we have on the board, and can't say enough about the county administrator, our county attorney, and the quality of work that they bring to this board, bring to the county, as well as their marvelous staff that does all the work day to day. So just thank them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. Commissioner Maddox.
Mr. Chair, I'll start with the hard stuff first. There's a request from the Value Adjustment Board, where I'm chair and Commissioner Caban is a member, that the commission waive the term limit, the committee term limit policy, so that we may be able to keep one of our members who has termed out and been a very faithful and good member of the board. A letter was sent to you, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the board from our Value Adjustment Board attorney. Madam Attorney, is this something that needs to come back as a agenda item, or is this something we can take up in a moment?
Madam Attorney.
So I believe there's already an agenda item in April to consider an applicant, a new applicant for appointment to that Value Adjustment Board. I'm sure if it's the board's direction, this issue could be added to that agenda item for April.
Yes, please. If, Mr. Chair, with the board's discretion, I ask that be added to consideration. As I understand it, that the person who applied may be on another committee, which would eliminate them as a potential member for the Value Adjustment Board. And in the case that does happen, I think the board wants to ask the committee, the committee wants to ask the board to consider extending those or waiving the time limit or the term limit for the member who is effectively rolling off because of term limits.
All right, is that a motion?
Do I need a motion to add that, Madam Chair?
You need the will of the board, or just can?
All right, so move.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Commissioner Maddox and County Attorney, there's a precedent for what is asked, but it's not to waive the entirety of the different boards, 40 boards. We have precedent for the Code Enforcement Board, where if you go back, you'll see where we have extended the time. And the exception being the knowledge thing, the specialty information, knowledge that that person serving brought to the board, which was rare and non-duplicable. And because of the extraordinary command of subject matter, our staff actually sought the board to extend that member's presence. So we do have a precedent, Madam County Attorney, and in part, the exception has been based on specialty of knowledge.
All right, so we've got Commissioner O'Keefe.
Which member of the board are we talking about?
I'm sorry, which member?
Yes.
It's skipping my mind right now.
Yeah, it'll come back as an item.
He is I know he's the county appointee on the board. Give me the members on the board, I'll tell you.
Gregory Cowan.
Cowan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. That'll be added to the item coming back.
All right, the rest of them are pretty easy. I request proclamation for Dr. Beverly Barber, retired professor of FAMU, artistic director of Orchesis Contemporary Dance for 37 years, choreographer for FAMU Theater Dance for 35 years, choreographer for the Marching 100 in the 1960s, and one of the founders of the Harambe Arts and Cultural Heritage Festival. I'd like to give her a proclamation, Mr.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously.
Motion celebrating Terrence Barber in 9 years of Working Class Wednesdays. Proclamation.
All right, we got a motion and a second for Working Class Wednesdays, my LT classmate, Terrence Barber. Commissioner O'Keefe.
I appreciate what Mr. Barber does for Working Class Wednesday, but I'm going to oppose this one respectfully. Thank you.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. O'Keefe is opposed. And back to you. Passes 6-1.
All right. Proclamation celebrating the life and legacy of Ruth Chase. There's my motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a great meeting, Commissioners. Let me pull up my notes. Not sure if, Commissioners, if you all read the news, I believe it was sometime last week, but there were 4 students from FSU who saved a man on the golf course who was having a heart attack and kept him alive by administering CPR. The name of the 4 gentlemen were Ty Schmidt, Charlie France, Tommy Provenzano, and Brandon Moore. So I would like to request a proclamation for their efforts.
All right, got a motion and a second, and all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Minor, I can't remember where it was or if you were talking to Ms. Woodall or Ms. Devane, but during that dialogue, you said something that I thought was very pivotal, and it was, in public service, it's hard and difficult advocating and fighting for folks who can't come to meetings, they can't pay you, they're just, they're an at-risk part of our community. And with that, I had been prepared to share some data that was gathered by the Children's Services Council in regards to the Fort Braden Family Resource Center. And this is particularly in the 32310 zip code. And Commissioner Proctor, we share this, the zip code. It's not just for Fort Braden and the rural community. This is the entire zip code. But through their survey, 65% of families in our 32310 community have children under 18. 40% of families are single-family households. 27% of children in 32310 live below the poverty line. 67% of community survey respondents cited transportation challenges. 67% of every respondent in that 32310 zip code who responded to the survey cited transportation challenges. Well, I think that's prominent is because over the last year and a half in my district, there's been 2 weather events, one being the April 2024 flooding event and one being the May 10th tornadoes, where there was significant damage to folks who live in mobile homes and manufactured homes. One in particular, Allie and I saw with our own eyes during the April weather event, seeing folks having to be evacuated by a boat from the Sheriff Department in partnership with the Fire Department through the mobile home park on West Highway 90 because the water level was, above their front door. Second was being the May 10th tornadoes, which tragically resulted in one of our constituents in District 2 in the middle of the night passing ultimately because a tree fell on her home. Additionally, dozens and dozens of other homes and mobile homes that were damaged. And tying this all together, I had some conversation with the county administrator on Saturday in regards to the weather event that was incoming. And I want to preface this conversation by thanking the county administrator because I know that in times of emergency weather events, it's all hands on deck. And it takes around-the-clock work and around-the-clock communication. And I greatly appreciate the experience that the county administrator has and his team. And I'm very aware in acknowledging that that experience outweighs any of our experience when it comes to natural weather events. However, I was elected to represent the needs of our constituents in District 2. And some of those needs that I have been hearing in feedback from our office, and also what we've seen just being in touch with the community, is that when it comes to our mobile homes and at-risk community, I think that we need to look at additional measures to educate our folks who live in mobile homes and manufactured homes for storm preparation readiness. Mr. County Administrator, I know that we've had some conversations about this, just recently, early this spring, in some meetings that we've had. But to point out where I think there could be a point of confusion, I think it was the National Weather Service posted at 4:15 p.m. on one of their social media posts that our mobile homes should prepare, that their mobile homes were not safe. And one of the points, addition to that, it said, prepare in advance. That was coming straight from their Facebook post that our staff reshared. Going back to the data points that I shared, our staff sent a mass text out, I think it was around 6:30 p.m., which I was greatly appreciative of. But factoring in the data that we have, 67% of our community survey respondents cited transportation challenges. So when you look at the means of some of our folks on the west side of our community and south side of our community, I think that there are some significant challenges that when we issue an emergency response, prohibits them from being able to just get up and leave. And so I want to point that out. And Mr. County Administrator, I don't know where we are kind of in the process as far as working on those. I know we talked about this when our meeting with DM, is like what those practices are going to look like. When do you think that we'll be able to see some of that come back to the board, or if there are new practices implemented?
Yeah, no, thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, and we'd be happy to bring something back. I didn't know the squall, this particular severe event wouldn't necessarily prompt a formal after action for us, but we can still bring back, and I hear you loud and clear on if that's the direction of the board, and even if it's not, we're always working on this kind of stuff, but to bring back, as you said, specific recommendation to increase education and preparedness focused on people in mobile homes in the community. So we'd be happy with that direction to bring that back to the board.
Yes, sir. So, yes, sir. So an idea I had, just, I think there's a couple ways we could engage with this. I think utilizing our community centers for community workshops to engage for storm preparedness as we head into hurricane season, where we use, Fort Brayton Community Center, Woodville Community Center, we have CMR in there, and we have, a community workshop as folks can come in there. But I think there's definitely a vulnerability, and we've seen a small glimpse of it in 2024 with 2 weather events. And this most recent storm, we dodged a bullet. There was 37 deaths, I think, last time I saw across the southeast. I woke up Saturday morning seeing several tornadoes just west of us. So, Mr. County Administrator, I know that we talked about when we had our meeting with DEM that there was going to be some areas of improvement for communications, particularly in our rural communities. Is that something that needs board direction, or is that something that staff plans to bring back to us already?
Yeah, I remember that, Commissioner. I want to just get Matt to come on up for clarification.
Our opportunities as identified from following that meeting are a fewfold. So let me talk about those. First off, let me start kind of talking about what we do throughout the year, and I won't belabor the point. The point is that disaster resilience and preparedness is a year-round activity. It's not just several days before a severe weather storm event, no matter if it's hurricane, a squall line, tornado risk, or whatever. It is a preparedness effort we make throughout the year. So that is the neighborhood trainings that was just touched on. We conduct neighborhood trainings with neighborhood associations throughout the county. We conduct also trainings at community centers. They are at Woodville, Fort Braden. They're part of the Senior Days training to make sure that we engage with vulnerable populations. So we've done dozens of these since 2017 when we had the opportunity to align emergency management and community and media relations. That's an ongoing activity that we do on a regular basis, in addition to distributing the Disaster Survival Guide, in which is also all of the details about what a tornado risk means for a mobile home, such as seeking sturdy shelters and buildings with friends and family. The need to prepare for a disaster before it is imminent is critical to the success and public safety of our community. We know that very well. But let me also underscore one thing that we also know very well, is that we're going to take absolutely every lesson from every weather event that we've had. And in addition to that is even the most recent weekend weather. That is to say that what we've heard, and I'm sure what all of you have heard, is that people still need more direct education and resources about tornado safety. So what does that mean? And we touched on that earlier just a month or two ago. That means street teams in manufactured home areas. That means going around door to door, engaging with folks, which we would do in county emergency management and community and media relations, to be able to give to those folks leave behinds of information, educate them, address their concerns and considerations head on. So that's part of that that we had talked about over the past few months and what we would be launching in advance of hurricane season. That street team is to bring, again, that education to the person. Also, it is to promote and drill down deeper and a finer point on tornado risk, safety, and consideration for when we do these trainings in the communities. We do think that our folks know about hurricane risk, but they also need to understand tornado risk. And I want to also put 2025 in comparison and in context for everyone here on the board. We've had 17 severe weather days since January 1, 2025. That's to say that we've had those days that could involve inclement weather, tornado risk to some degree. That's why it's important for this to be a year-round preparedness action. Also, one thing I want to share too, which is one thing that we would be doing in county emergency management and community and media relations, is mailing a disaster survival guide to every home. That's not something we've done before. That's something in consideration of this upcoming year that would give directly to people, manufactured home, built home, or otherwise, all the direct information about how they can be prepared for any emergency. So as you might recall, we distribute that in county and city facilities and other things like that, but we've decided that there's an opportunity to up that game and make sure that everyone has the opportunity to be as prepared as possible. So there are a few more things under the hood, but again, I don't want to belabor that right now. I just want to touch on some of the high points. Those are some of the intended measures. What we would intend to do, if it's the will of the administrator on the board, is we would bundle that into we're not stopping and waiting for it, but we'd bundle it into the May update that you have upcoming for the implementation of the after-action reports that you've received over the past year. We would provide in there the play-by-play of the updates we're doing in communications and engagement to citizens. So anyway, happy to answer any questions. That was just the highlights.
Yeah, and so a lot we're currently doing, a lot that's going on. We know that the board, you couldn't just because you can't see everything. So a lot that's already happening, from Matt said, a lot more that's going to happen based on all of our experience up to and including this most recent one and May, you said, in terms of coming back. And we'll bring it all back to the board and obviously receive any other direction that the board might have.
Thank you. So those are upcoming new practices coming this May?
Yeah, well, they're not going to wait until May. So those are things that we're going to be implementing and providing an update as part of the implementation action plan that you'll see in May. That's all the implementations of the after-action recommendations you've seen before, from the bicentennial flooding to Helene, so on and so forth, Maytown tornadoes, obviously. You'll get an update on those activities. So we'll be doing them in the months ahead, and you'll receive further information in May.
Okay, awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you. Mr. County Administrator, one recommendation that I've just seen kind of firsthand. The city of Tallahassee does this very, very well through their utility service. The texting program that they have has been very beneficial to where, when one of the last hurricanes we had, I was getting daily text messages and mass text messages about this is how much power's been out, this is what to expect. And I think some of the feedback I heard particularly from Saturday from a couple of our constituents who live in mobile homes was that they had reached out to our office earlier on Saturday and said, hey, there's potential tornadoes, like, what do we do? And at that point, we hadn't had information to say, hey, it's unsafe, we're recommending go stay with a friend. And by the time we issued the alert, it was close to 7 o'clock and they had a hard time getting transportation issues. So I think one thing that, just from feedback that we've heard from the community, is that, hey, if it's looking like this is the possibility danger, issuing proactive text messages so while folks during the day can start making arrangements for the storm.
Sure. And then, Mr. Chair, if I can just check on a couple things for that one. So we do maintain a couple items that we're going to really drill in hard at folks sign up for. Now, these are both the text alerts that we have through an Everbridge system maintained by the state of Florida, again, made available to us. So we have a text-based system that folks can sign up for. So let me be clear about what the utilities has that maybe we don't necessarily, is you sign up for electrical, they got your phone number. Ours is twofold. One, if you give us that information, we can provide you all of the alerts and text and information that you need immediately from the National Weather Service right there. So we're going to draw, again, a finer point on that point.
We have a lot of people subscribed already.
Yes,
but
so nearly 28,000 or so subscribe to those alerts, but there's opportunity for more folks to subscribe to that. Then we're going to continue to drive that point home for folks for text alerts in the upcoming cycle. In addition to that, though, one thing I want to touch on is the wireless emergency alert, too. It's a very powerful tool. And in the state of Florida, for the past weather event for the wireless emergency alerts, we were the first in the state to issue the wireless emergency alert that we did, and one of 2 counties to issue that for the past storm over the weekend. So I just want to underscore that.
Great, thank you. Mr. County Administrator, I appreciate these efforts. It looks like that we are implementing some higher density communication practices into hurricane season, so I appreciate it. If I hear anything else, I'll be sure to relay it. Mr. Chair, if I make my next point.
Sure.
Next point is I just kind of want to issue a little bit of a something for us to keep on our radar. Florida Department of Transportation, kind of publicly backed out of the Blueprint project in Midtown. I think that was like a little over a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And that was a Blueprint project, from my understanding, that was in partnership with the state. Another project that is going to weigh heavily on the state's involvement coming up is the Airport Gateway. The Airport Gateway project, from my understanding, is going to take some participation from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And just from my understanding and exchanging emails and with staff and looking through some of our previous material, there's a possibility that the road for segment C may take a cabinet vote by the Florida cabinet, involving the governor, the agriculture commissioner, the attorney general, and the CFO. From my understanding, the Florida Internal Investment Trust Fund, I believe is the correct acronyms, FIITF, but is acting as the board of trustees for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. If I'm saying that correctly, which means that the road, the land that is currently managed by Florida State may have to go through a cabinet vote or take some state participation. And so typically, how I would, in a real estate transaction, that kind of due diligence is done step 1. But where we are now is, we've spent a lot of money on that. So I just kind of want to say it's something that I think we should pay attention to, as it will take participation from the state. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just have a few proclamation requests. The first one is recognizing Public Works Week. If I could ask for a motion. All right, I've got a motion. Need a second? Public Works Week proclamation. All right, I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Passes unanimously. The second is a proclamation recognizing First Responder Wellness Week.
So moved, second.
So moved, and a second from an enthusiastic Commissioner O'Keefe. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, passes unanimously. I was going to ask for a motion for the 4 FSU students, but my vice chair beat me to it. He said, scratched it out. That's okay, man, you got it. My next one is a proclamation honoring the McClay soccer team for winning a state championship. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Next, a motion proclaiming May 25th as Family Abduction Awareness Day. Got a motion, second from Commissioner O'Keefe. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. And lastly, a proclamation recognizing March as National Athletic Training Month.
Second.
All right, motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you all so much. Thank you for a great, healthy meeting, and we will see you back here as soon as we can. We are adjourned.